So welcome to this course on calculation. I know the timing is a bit unfortunate for a lot of people for this first course, but I think timing might even be worse later on. So a lot of you will be watching this on playback. I want you to know that you can always ask me questions in the Facebook group. And later on, it will be in the forum when we have that up and running. But you will always be able to ask me questions there. Don't do it to my private account. Do it in 365. Others would like to see the answers as well. I should have successfully shared a slide with you. I hope. So the course in calculation will be over 13 weeks. And why 13? Not because some people consider it an unlucky number. Very often hotels won't have a 13th floor. The one I stayed in last week and this week didn't have a 13th floor. But because 13 weeks is a quarter of a year. So we plan to have at all time 4 courses which digs into a topic. I know that at the moment Ramesh is talking about positional play. Ivan Salgado is talking about Kasparov. Sam Shankland is talking about navigating inferior positions. Basically, when things have gone wrong, what do we do then? And then I am talking about calculation. And there's a number of topics I wanted to talk about. But I thought that calculation is probably the topic I'm most known to have talked about and to have written about. I've written so far 2 books on strict calculation. And people would probably want to know what I mean, what my opinions are about calculation. And I have a lot of things to say beyond these books. So I'm just quickly going to go through the slide, and then and there's a lot of hello, 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 and hello, hello, hello to you too. So my opinion about what calculation is has evolved over time. I wrote a book called Excelling at Chess Calculation, and it was published in 2004. It was one of the last books I wrote for Everyman. I wrote, I think, 3 books for them that year while we were already beginning the work with Quality Chess. I left on good terms. I think whenever you have a job, it's important to leave on good terms. There's no reason to make enemies on the way out. And anyway, that book was quite openly an attempt to take Dvoretsky's ideas and make them more accessible. So it was very much focused on elimination, comparison, imagination, these kind of skills. And later on, when I wrote the book Grandmaster Preparation Calculation, it was a Dvoretsky idea again. Dvoretsky had told me for a decade that somebody should write a book not on combination based on how the pieces move, but based on how you had to think to solve the positions. And again, he was talking about candidate moves, imagination, intermediate moves, comparison, elimination, and there are a few extra ones. Some of you are quite young, and you will experience many years from now how it feels when your memory becomes less reliable and you become reliable. They rely on lists. But since then, this was 2012, I published that book. That's 7.5 years ago. It was published just before the World Championship match between Gelfand and Anand. And Gelfand wrote the foreword, or to be more accurate, I wrote the foreword, and Gelfand felt that it was entirely honest, that it represented his view. He was busy preparing for the match. I was helping him preparing for the match by collecting positions for him, as I'd done for 3 years already at that time. And of course, later on, we've written books together. And the book is training material I had collected for Gelfand, and a few easier positions as well. And this is supposed to be a secret, but I'm actually currently working on the second edition, which will be just revising the book and then putting a little appendix in with why things weren't working in some positions, and just a little talk about the book in general. And then there will be another chapter of additional 24 positions. If you have the old book is fine. No reason to upgrade. And if you don't have it, maybe wait until it's out in March. So one of the questions I've come to ask over the years is, let's see here, what is calculation? And I would like to have some attempts of defining calculation from you. There's no wrong or right answer. There's my answer, there's your answer, there's other people's answers. But very often we use words that have a complex meaning, have a lot of implications, and we never thought about what they are. And I think it is quite interesting to do so. I think it helps us. So Robert is saying something which I think many would agree with, which is the process of exploring variations and drawing conclusions with the goal of finding the next best move. The art of seeing what is not obvious in a position. And Manish, knows me, see what you don't see normally. So both John and Manish, they know me. I've written my stuff, so they're coming with attempts. Visualization skills, it's a part of calculation for sure. Being able to see a position which is not currently in front of you accurately. Thinking pros and cons on the next coming moves. I think that is probably more evaluation than calculation. So yeah, with visualization skills, the ideas and plan we execute with the best move we think. That sounds okay. I think you missed a word in your typing. I don't care about that. What that sounds to me is more like just thinking. This is one of the reasons why I'm asking the question is that there is a book that was now published 20 years ago that I had tumultuous relationship with, which is by an American author called John Watson, called Secrets of Chess Strategy. And the book is, I have a lot of problems with the content of the book. I have just a lot of disagreements, but it is a masterpiece. It sort of invented the modern chess book to a great extent. A really serious book trying to look at a topic in an intelligent way. Previously, if you think of the books by Alekhine or Capablanca or something like this, which were not game collection or opening books, those genres were quite firmly established. But there was the genre of the educational book, Oeve, Alekhine, Capablanca. There were many others. Very often they were explaining very simple things to very simple people. While Secret of Chess Strategy was an attempt to explain really complex things and really intelligent things to really intelligent people. And after that, chess books changed. And I give John Watson full credit for that. Entirely his fault. Previously, we had seen books that were very high level and aimed at intelligent people, and they were mainly written by Mark Dvoretsky. But his books were a collection of essays or collection of lectures. They were not thematically strong. Like one of the books is called, I'm trying to look here at Sam Shankland's bookshelf if he has it. It does not appear, it does. I think it's called Opening Developments. And the reason why it's called Opening Developments is because the publisher wanted opening in the title. So Mark, he just made something up. In Russian, it was called Complicated Moves. No, not Opening Preparation, that's in the other series. That's from the lecture series. And that is an openings, but again, it's many lectures by many people and not a coherent message. It's in the School of Chess Excellence, Volume 4. I think it's called Opening Development. In Russian, it's called Complicated Games. I will, one day I will publish a book called Complicated Games, continuing my homage to Mark by naming a lot of my books after his books, but of course have like the series different and cover different and author different and so on, so people don't get confused. Okay, so calculation. A lot of people would say it's simply seeing variations in your head. Those who have heard me talk about this before will know that my opinion is different. I'm calling it seeing things you do not automatically see. Robert's saying I should write a book called Complicated Books to answer the question what I should recommend to read in the middle of the class. I shall consider that. If anyone wants help with a training plan, what structure, or have questions of which books to read, ask me in the Facebook group. I'll be very, very happy to reply. There were a lot of people asking my last class these kind of questions. They don't belong in this topic, but I'm very happy to answer there. And I'm not, sometimes I'm going to recommend books from Quality Chess. We generally are thought of as having the best books in many categories. And sometimes when we don't have the best books in some category, I will recommend other books. I don't believe in only recommending your own things and thinking that would make people buy them. I think people will listen to your recommendation if you give good recommendations, otherwise they will not. So what's important to understand about calculation here? I wrote this down because this is really, really important. So the two things. First is seeing the things you do not automatically see, or we do not automatically see, I normally say. This is one point, and the other point is calculation is a part of decision making. Like some of the things some of you wrote was evaluation, like should we do this or this, which comes after calculation often. So we calculate variations in order to understand what the best decision is, not in order to calculate everything till the end. Calculation is a tool like many others in the chess player's arsenal, useful as long as it helps us decide between moves only. So I want to make this point before we go back to talking about things we do not automatically see. So what I see very often with students, and what I see with have seen in the first submissions to Homework Club is long variations where you don't need long variations. If you want to know like a position I'm talking about, let's talk about position number 8, I think it was in the last homework sheet, where there was a possibility of an exchange sacrifice, positional exchange sacrifice. And there, some students submitted 7-8 move long variations. Now, often, this could mean two things. One could mean that they're nervous about suggesting an exchange sacrifice. And the other question is, the other thing it could mean is that that actually reveals how they were thinking. They were trying to calculate to the end. While we give the exchange, take one pawn, we'll definitely take another. And we have better pawn structure and more active pieces. And that should be enough. And basically, so what's the meaning of arsenal? The word basically means your collection of weapons. So in this connection here, it means it's one of the thinking methods we can use, is calculation. We also have positional analysis, like we have the 3 questions that you will know from Homework Club, and which I will definitely give a whole course on positional play later on, and that will come up again and again and again. Okay, can I send a link to the Facebook group? I will ask our admin to send out a link. I'm not going to do it right now. So what I often see with calculation, this is really an important part of it, is people over-calculate. They calculate because they don't know how else to approach a position. And they calculate too far. The most important things in calculation comes on the first few moves. After that, if we think the 3 of variation spreads in all directions, it just becomes unable to administer it. There are some exceptions to this when we have long force sequences with 1 or 2 options, where we have to think a bit further. And in my work, like I'm in training camp with Sam and Chris at the moment, and in our work with them, we definitely have situations where we go beyond move 3 in variations. But this is like the most advanced camp I have done for a long time. It's maybe even more advanced camp than the ones I had in October and July, which everyone was over 2,600 or more or less. So at least 4 or 5 guys were, some over 2,700. And there we find, in this camp here, we find their positions where they're very deep differences. It just doesn't happen very often in games. When I look at games between the best players in the world, that's not where they make the mistakes. They make them on the first few moves. So basically, I agree with Ben Larsen. Long variation, wrong variation. So I think this is my last page of my slide. It should be good. So how do I go here? So this is now where I pause share. So now I'm not sharing my screen for a moment. So that means I can very quickly get up this position here. So this is an example of here. So I want to go to share. Good, and then I can go here, and then I can go here. Sorry, I'm learning on the job here. So can you all see this position? Can you hear me? All good, thank you. So this is a position with white to play. I will generally, if we have positions with black to play, I will generally try to do this. I don't like doing it in books. I find it confusing. A lot of people find it confusing. And some people absolutely love it. As a publisher, we don't do it in book because the people who hate it feel stronger about it than the people who love it. They would not buy a book, while the people who love it would buy it anyway. So there's nothing gained. And in order to publish books, we have to have people wanting to buy them. Good. So here it's white to play. So this position doesn't look like a critical moment, and it isn't. But it certainly requires calculation. So we have first suggestion, which is to give a pawn with f5 and play rook f1 and play for attack. Well, there is a chance that that would work, of course. For me, it doesn't seem realistic. But I don't think that's how we would start. What we'll start with is a very simple three-step formula, and I could have put this in the slide. So first we have to see the options. So a lot of people are suggesting queen f2, which is definitely the positional move. Queen f2, and white is a little bit better. And this is the move you could make without calculation. But as Manish points out, d takes c5 is also a candidate. So if we have this three-step plan, which is consider the options, find the options, analyze them, and then choose the one we like the best. I think we will very quickly come to the fact that f5 and queen f1, we simply would miss our f-board. I'm not saying there's not counterplay. I'm just saying there's maybe not enough counterplay. Here, to a great extent, I'm basing that on experience. But we can look for just a moment. This class is for everyone. So I assume that the next move is going to be something like here. And then already we would take, let's say bishop takes, and rook c8. Now, you still are not close to, producing real threats here. And I'm already coming in here and disturbing you. Also, in many lines, I have this move if I need it. I also have this move in many positions. The queen would be absolutely safe there. It's very difficult to attack g7 with the bishop. Some bishop takes h6 sacrifices will not work if I play king h8. And I can play rook g8 as well. I'm not saying this is not I'm not saying no compensation. I'm just saying that here I don't believe white is fighting for an advantage. I think that this is definitely a serious positional idea. And we should consider that, and therefore queen f2 is a candidate move. Okay, I have another suggestion here. So d takes c5 and queen f2 are like my main suggestions. and Manish is trying to calculate, and you're not far enough. Okay, Alberto says the rook's doing nothing on d1. No, it's actually supporting your sender. You don't know where the rooks are best placed, so you don't want to make that decision yet. The suggestion of g4, I think that here we can play f5 with black. Maybe take an f5. And here we get a very complex position. And my real issue here is, well, white is not managing to play f5. And this bishop is not very good. And we have also weakened the king. And the thing is, if this works, you know, then it could be great. But it's very likely also that our king will just be weak for the next 40 moves. So you say queen g2. Okay, it's let's say it's important to play something like this. And here again, I'm not sure. We would consider this during a game, and this position is not singular. So this here is can be considered. It's not without merit. And I'm not sure that I've given the best moves for black at all. It's also possible here that I would play f takes. If you take back, I can play rook f8. And the thing is, f5 is strong. I don't know. It's very open. It's double-edged. I'm not sure I've suggested all the best move for black here. I do consider g4 very risky. Not necessarily bad, but very risky. I would not want to play g4 before I had consolidated. So in this position here, I can also take on d4 and rook c8 in some positions. Yes, if white gets in f5 and I have to go to h7 with the king, with the queen, then white has achieved the goal. So maybe the idea you mentioned was g4, f5, queen g2, cd4, bishop d4, rook c8, which looks very sensible. Okay, so queen f2 is a positional move. We want to play f5 without weakening our structure, and we're also clearly threatening to take on c5. The other really critical move for me is d takes c5. Now, if white had another move here, he'll play bishop d4, followed by b4, and he's winning. If black plays rook c8, we play b4 and we're winning, or queen d5, so on. So here there are these two options. Queen f2, white is a little better. We play for positional things. D takes c5, and maybe we're totally winning. So this is where a clear example of where we go from positional thinking, where we're thinking about how to play f5 and improve our positions and so on, which is all positional, strategic, however you want to call it. And then we have the concrete, d takes c5. Suddenly that turns the position into a very concrete thing. Now, obviously, black going into this position, Grandmaster Soskis, and he's a decent player and actually quite a good tactical player and very imaginative. He didn't play this without ideas. So let's try to calculate this variation. So here we do different things that's very important. First of all, we slow down. Since we know that mistakes in calculations are made very early on, I discussed this already, things we miss are very early on. We don't want to go too fast, because then we're ending on move 4-5 of variations where already they have nothing to do with what is best play. So d takes c5, we look for black's options, and it's been pointed out by quite a number of you guys that black will of course play d4. If we play bishop f2, black plays bishop takes c5. His position has improved. There's no reason to calculate any further. So dc5, d4. So we have to play bishop takes d4. Now there's not a combination with rook takes d4. Robert is making entirely the wrong way of calculating here, but thank you for submitting, and sorry for singling you out. So he says dc5, d4, bishop takes d4, bishop takes c5. Doesn't seem promising. Bishop f2 is wrong, so therefore he should play queen f2. Now that is lazy calculation. If you're calculating, you should be I like to say it's like math. You cannot be guessing. Well, queen f2 is not more critical. This is wrong. D takes c5 wins if black doesn't have compensation for his pawns. So queen f2 gives an advantage for sure. We can see that quite easily. But d takes c5 would win if black does not have enough compensation and doesn't have anything that works. And so far in the variations, Jeet and Manish, for example, have said they don't go far enough. So let's try to go into this critical variation. Now we want to analyze a critical variation. Critical variation is the one where it would mean the biggest outcome. So for a defending side, it's usually the critical variation is the one where he's fine. Some of you in homework club have sent me variations where black gives up the queen for a rook and knight or something in a bad position. And it's like, yeah, we all understand that that doesn't work. So we don't need to look at it. What we need to look at is where he tries to keep a piece up and run with the king. And if we don't checkmate him, it doesn't work. That's critical. Here, critical would be taking the whole thing, you know, like we say, take the money and run. So d takes c5. I will put it on board in a moment. I know some of you might struggle a little bit with keeping it ahead, but d takes c5, d4, bishop takes d4, bishop c5, not queen e3, but queen f2. It's just more balanced there. Rook d4, rook d4. And here queen b6 is a critical move. If black is wasting time, let's say, with let's say king h7, then we have time to play b4, and then play rook d1, and then we can always play queen d2 or something, get out of the pin. So queen b6, rook e d1. Now rook d8 doesn't exist because it's rook takes d8 check. And if you play king h7, I play b4. And if you play b4, I play king h2, and then I have time to move the queen. So this is the critical position. And in advance, we would sit and look at that position. It comes very quickly for an experienced player. I'm not going to put it on the board because the idea here is not to train visualization skills. We will definitely have lessons with that at some point, whether it will be me or the great visualization wizard Ramesh who will have them, I don't know. From how I describe it, you can probably guess what I believe. So, but we have this variation. Of course, we can give up the queen, but black will be fine. It's not the right direction. This is often a way, you know, when I analyze with people, because I learned that with some people, they will just keep on coming with new moves. More and more and more and more moves and ideas. And it's even like 2,600 grandmasters. And it's very good just to ask, are things going in the right direction? And often they'll be like, yeah, no, of course not. And then we can get back to talking about what's actually happening. So here, Queen F2. Now, black has only one move to keep things alive, which is to give the rook, the exchange. And if white is in time to consolidate, like here, we cannot easily get rook d8 in. And if white has time to play b4 and get the queen out of danger, like let's say black tries to play really slowly here with king h7, we'll play b4. We'll get back to queen b6, and we go here. We have queen b6, king h2. Like white is one move away from freeing himself, like queen b2 or queen d2, rook d8, and it looks like, oh, then we'll always have this check. Without this check, property is lost. But we do have this check, and that's what calculation is about. It's about seeing these details. So this slow play here, like king h7, this is just because it was suggested in chat, is not critical. What's critical is queen b6. I have to play rook ed1. Now, if white has a move, let's say king h7, we play b4. Let's say black plays b4 to try to keep the pin. We play king h2. Now here, if black had time, he'll be fine. But if white has time, he will just win. He will just be a pawn up. So the challenge when we saw this variation advance is like here we look like we are close to technically winning. Like I would like to play king f1 with white actually, because I keep the defense on the queen, and I'm ready to move it as well. But as Manish and Shahil are pointing out, that in this position here, which we should have seen in advance. Of course, when we get here, things are very easy. Comparable. Black has f6. Without f6, his position doesn't work. But now he will equalize. He will win back his pawn. He will take on e5 twice. He will take on d4. We will have a drawn ending, and white's advantage is definitely gone. And the key point is that after ef6, the rook doesn't go to d8 where it's taken by check, but it goes to e4. So this is the calculation challenge in this position, which started here. So once we have calculated this position, it's like I was saying, there's 3 steps in decision making. See the options, analyze the options, choose the best one. I will put that on a slide later on. And the slide I have from today, of course, I'll put it in the Facebook group, and I will put it out on email as well, or our admin will. So in this position here, we basically had some various positional decisions where we have g4 and queen f2, where, as you could hear from my way of talking about those options, that I see them based very much on feeling, understanding, and general decision making. This is the way we make most positional decisions. Not really much to calculate, but we see various options and then we choose them from rather general ideas often. Like, I don't like g4 because my king will be weak forever. It's when you get older, you will know that forever is a mighty long time. And the game could last all the way to 100. I especially hope that's true for life. And so we get a question here for Robert. Do you think it's acceptable for a player to make a decision here based on intuition? Well, it's a 3-way answer. First of all, in terms of unacceptable behavior, I don't think making decisions based on intuition is something that's gonna cause an uproar. Secondly, there's a lot of strong players that probably would make the decision based on intuition, but they're also limiting themselves. And when I say strong players, I could mean really strong players. The famous example is, of course, Anish Giri, who everyone makes fun of for being a drawish player, which is just blatantly untrue. In football, or now in American soccer terms, he would be a team that draws their matches 5-5, not 0-0. But somehow, a lot of draws in his highly entertaining games. Very, very principled player, very interesting player, just a lot of draws. But one of his problems is that he doesn't really do the calculation part well. And so there are strong players that make decisions based on intuition. The problem is, from my perspective, it's the third point, which is it's not a good way to play chess. It's not the best way. Now, Anish Giri, he doesn't play chess well because of the things he does badly. He doesn't play chess better than he could be. He could play chess even better if he was doing things better. And I know he's number 5 in the world. He's been number 2, number 3, number 4. It's been around there for a long time. And I know that when I'm saying, that he could be playing chess better, it sounds a little, at least to me, it sounds a little like it's not my place. And it's not meant in any form of disrespect at all. He's one of my favorite players, as you could hear, the 5-5 analogy. And all players have things that do better than others. But it's based on analysis. It's based on analysis of a lot of his games. Because I find him so fascinating as a player. And also I find him as a person, like in chess, we should be happy to have such a fantastic role model in ways to behave as a sportsman. He's really making chess more interesting with the way he enjoys talking about it freely, his good sense of humor, the way that after everyone made fun of him as a drawish player, he, instead of being offended about it, he owned it and making jokes about it. Like when Ding Liren won his first game in the candidates in round 13, 2018, and he's tweeted, "There can be only one." But in his case, he makes a lot of decisions in critical moments based on intuition, and that's what happens when you have situations where you should calculate. And you decide, I'll just make a lazy decision based on intuition. And in that situation, you're laying the groundwork for how you will deal with these kind of positions all the time. And there are many times where only calculation will do the job. And if you're not used to calculating, you won't do it when it's the only way. Here, okay, white is also better after queen f2, so even though d takes c5 is very tempting, you can say, oh, I'm better no matter what. And in his game, he did win with queen f2, and queen f2 is the best move. So based on that example, based on this example, it's like, yeah, here you could say you get a way of not calculating because calculation would show that it doesn't work. But there are so many winning positions, much, much better positions that people people get into drop. Okay, so that's a concrete question here, which we should look at. I think rather than me getting more muffled up here. So what happens if we play like this? I think here is possible. I don't know. So this is where I would like to not be able to, not having to talk to you guys for a little while and just think myself. My first feeling would be that it gives this extra option. Yeah. Queen C3. Yeah, so the difference, if we play in the same way, here is that in this position, I think white actually is a pawn up. So there's nothing about a pin. And they're saying Queen C2, Queen C3. Okay, I want to, we have only 12 minutes left. I want to look at one other example as well. So this one here, I'm going to allow you to think on your own. If you want to take a screenshot now, it's probably a good moment. I will also copy the position and I'll put it in the Facebook group. I'll put the position in the Facebook group. It's all fine. And again, if you can always write to our admin team if you want to get on the Facebook group. Saying maybe the problem is white won't have Queen C2 check. We will have Queen D3 check. It's sort of the same, or Queen E4 check. So we have a suggestion here which looks right from Yoka, but I don't know. I think everyone should have a chance to think for themselves. So you can check this on your own. I'll put it in the Facebook group also. I want to continue with another example. Just save this. So here. I think this is the right one. Yes, it is. Robert is asking, could I copy an email? Says I don't have Facebook. And no. Very soon we will have the forum, but meanwhile I cannot go and do people individually. You can copy the positions very easily. So here's a game between Jungi, and I wanted to show it as an example of what calculation is not. So as I was saying, yeah, I understand some people are not on Facebook. You can copy the position simply from the screen, so you're not going to greatly miss out on anything. And we'll soon have the forum, and everything will happen through that. So it's not like I'm saying everyone has to be on Facebook, but also we cannot really. Okay, I'll think about it. But now I want to finish the lesson. So here. From my way of seeing things is, as I was saying, there's this 3-step formula, which is find the options, analyze them, and choose the best one. Now, some people make mistakes in this this progression, and they do it at different places, and I always thought the main problem was number one, seeing the options. That was the biggest challenge I saw in my students, which is actually also what you agree here. He probably did wrong. So if we have see the options, analyze your options, and choose the best one. Well, I had situations where people don't see what the options are. And in this position here, we have 3 options. And I'm just going to mark them with arrows so everyone remember them. And A6 is not with the idea, B5, it is, of course, but B5 immediately is also an option to try to undermine the center dynamically. So these are the 3 options. And from my perspective, good calculation is not what Sagar Shah in his ChessBase article here called something like grandmaster calculation or something like this. I actually entirely disagreed with him. We're good friends and business partners and everything, but sometimes good friends can disagree. I didn't think it was good calculation. As I said, this game was Aniskiri against Yu Yangui. So in the game, you played B5. And after take, here, and here, we got the kind of position Anish likes. There's a better pawn structure, it's slightly better placed, and he played a good game. And you can look this up if you want. We don't need to calculate really to see that line. Then there's a slower option, which is A6. Well, also we don't need to calculate much. If white plays E4, we play B5. If he plays A4, now we can play knight D5. This is this comparison. And simply because the rook will not be trapped when we get these bishop E4, bishop take B7 ideas we will get in a moment. Now, during the game, you know, I'm saying Giri cannot calculate. Of course, that doesn't mean that he cannot see a lot of things really, really well. It's obvious that he does. And in this position here, during the game, apparently he had calculated very, very far. But calculation, if we have it as I was saying in the beginning in the slide, as the idea being, you know, to calculate what we need to make good decisions, then this was bad calculation. In the game, during the game he calculated knight takes d5, which is of course critical. And I've done this with grandmaster students, and from their perspective, they couldn't find a way to make it work for black. So bishop e4. Now, if the pawn is on a6, as we're talking about, then knight takes c3, and bishop takes b7 after the exchange of queens. We can play rook a7 with pawn up. So, so this variation, actually, from a decision-making point of view, if we have this comparison, okay, if I play a6, I will get b5 because he cannot play a4. I can just take. So he plays e4, I play b5. We get a complicated position, and I will have decisions to make later. Let's go and make it. You could also try to calculate this very, very long variation. And Giri, who actually did this from the white side of the board, he found, he thought it was, I think, winning white. You can find it on ChessBase India. So the idea is that after bishop takes b2, rook b1. Now the bishop doesn't have a retreat square, as we have knight f6 and bishop takes b7. But black can play bishop c6. And Giri saw this. Okay, so now if white doesn't take on b2, then he's pawn down. So that is the only critical move. We have rook e8, rook d2, take, knight c3, no more to be seen. So therefore f5. Any ideas here for white? Let's flip the board. I think queen b3, I can play king h8. So Robert and Mukund, Alberto, all seen a nice tactic. Okay. So yeah, Giri had seen check. Here, take, 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 and take. And he had finished his calculation here with conclusion that white would win. And this is what he based his d5 move on. Now it turns out that black has queen c4 and still creating threats. And we have no way to castle, we have queen c1. This is now where we enter the territory of what Giri had not seen. And here if rook b1, we'll check, and perpetual. And if rook d2, rook d8. And here white has to play something like rook f1 to avoid losing. And we're perpetual. Okay, so I'm going to take a few questions here. I'm also gonna do this. So my point with this here is we had this entirely long and practical line where it's very likely we missed something. Or we can play a6 and have an unclear game. And for calculation, this is an important part of it. It's like, it's a tool we bring out when we need it, because it's a dangerous tool to use. It can easily go wrong. And we only really want to use it when the problem is best solved with calculation. This is a long discussion about what calculation is and how it's done well and so on. And we will continue talking about it over another 12 one-hour sessions. And it will continuously come up in homework club. And I'm sure we will do something about critical moments at some point, and so on. And it's one of the most important topics in chess. We can see here in this position, black's already considering c4, b4, c3. White doesn't have e5 because d5 is really hanging this time. Again, we have rook a7. So here we have a very complicated position. This is what he should have played. Okay, so I have a question from Robert here. I know that I always miss critical options. I would never make it to this point. What thinking technique can you use to improve the search for ideas? Do you think you have to see many top games and keep searching and remember what you find? Well, we're going to talk about the technique of calculation over this series. That's what it's about. The first session here was about what is calculation, what is it not. It's a tool for decision making. It's not something where you just try to look as deeply as possible and the one who can look furthest wins. Like in this case here, Gary had this long variation, which is highly impractical. And it was a nice variation, but impractical. Black should just play a6 and b5. And calculation is just as much looking at the moves right in front of you as it is looking along variations. It's not who calculates furthest wins, as I say. So I'm going to talk more about this, seeing the options, analyzing the options, choosing the right one in the next session. So this long variation, I don't think you should see it. This is the most point. I don't think it's practical. And he's scary. 27.97 at the time. He was number 2 in the world, I think. Didn't calculate it correctly. You know, I'm not saying none of you cannot be better than Ishgiri or anything like that. I'm just saying that what is the agenda here? It's calculation. It's about choosing the best move. Here, I don't think it actually helped him choose the best move. He saw he had ideas, and he wasn't able to calculate the game to the end. I don't think it's his intention to calculate to the end. So I'm being told good night. Thank you very much. It's 9 in the morning here, and I'm flying overnight. So I will see my bet next time in like 38 hours or something like that. So it's a bit early. I think that unless there are any questions, this is a good moment to stop. And when people say thank you, it normally also means enough. I think we ended on a good point, and we will continue next week. And if you do not find your questions were answered, there's a Facebook group. And if you're not on Facebook, you have to wait for a few weeks until we have a forum. Thank you very much.